Hello everyone, welcome to episode 18 of ZK Live. My name is Zach Kenney and I own ZK Painting. This is our Sunday night talk where I am now going to be doing these by myself. We have some questions to answer. I finally got home. This is a part 2 already because part 1 was we were running way behind and I was at my shop still loading the trailer. So you guys got to see me behind the scenes a little bit, getting sweaty. I apologize. I was like talking to the camera with sweat pouring down my forehead, but we got the trailer loaded. Thanks to my wife, I couldn't have done it without her. Really tough loading that up, but we got it. We got it super secured, so nothing's gonna fall or damage any of those massive doors that are in the trailer. And we made it home safe and sound. And ready for ZK Live, a little different than part 1. So again, thanks for being here. If you guys aren't following us on YouTube, all these episodes get posted on YouTube. They also go on Spotify podcasts. If you search ZK Live on Spotify, you'll find these as in a podcast form, so you don't have to watch the video. I've heard from a few people that it's a bit annoying to watch the whole episode on live or on IGTV later. If you get a phone call, it'll pop out. So it's really easy to listen to on Spotify. Apple iTunes, we're waiting to get approval, but it should be very soon. But for now, you can go to Spotify for sure and just listen to it and not have to hear it. So again, I need your questions. Your questions are very helpful, so I don't just rant all by myself. Hey, Carney. We have one of the team that helps get this whole thing produced and put onto in podcast form. It's huge. Kyle's down there too. So I just got back. If you guys in part 1, you'll see we just loaded up the trailer with a bunch of doors for Designer Garage Doors. Eric over there. Those are going to be delivered tomorrow morning. I'm sure I'll be posting on my story. Happy Kyle and Carney are the interns that are working on our social media and our YouTube stuff. They're hanging out with their dad by the pool. That's awesome. I've been in business for almost 9 years now, from the time I first started working for myself. But I always say it's been like 3 or 4 years of actually being in business or trying to be in business and not just work for myself. So I had a productive weekend. Shoreline and that team over there, they came up again this Saturday. I think he brought another 20 painters, and they had I have some drone footage of that. They had 20 painters on the outside of that house, and it's just to watch 20 painters work. Like they're I'm in the most I have so much respect. It's so impressive to watch, but the way like ants and certain like insects can work as a team without talking. When a good team comes together, they can work without talking and they just like fit in. And watching the Shoreline guys work and they just fill right in the gaps. It's really impressive. Watching 20 guys work was something else. How is the various social media outlet growing, and how do you see them paying off in the next few years? Yeah, so social media has been huge for us. That's why I'm on here now. That's why we're up to 9 painters. And there's a lot of demand for our services right now, and I can attribute most of that to social media. So I'm looking to double down on that. My plan to build out the YouTube. That takes a lot more time to build out the YouTube than the Instagram does. To do what I want to do, I want to do fairly highly produced episodic type of shows, if you will, of our projects from start to finish. That's my goal. Is I want to start having like a documented process, like on HGTV, of our jobs, so that people can go back and watch them, see what we were doing. It's good marketing. It's good for clients to understand what it's like to hire us. What it's like when ZK Painting comes and does your job. So definitely ZK Painting on YouTube. That's the one that I've been putting off the longest because it takes the most amount of work, I think, to really be good at it. The TikTok is the most fun and the easiest. It's short little clips. So our TikTok has taken off we started it 2 months ago, and we have 119,000 followers already, which is nuts. One of the videos has 17 million views now. So, I'm definitely like, at first I was very like, oh, TikTok, like what the heck? We're not going to get anybody, who's going to hire me because of TikTok? But I also said the exact same thing about Instagram 4 years ago. Who's going to hire me because I'm on Instagram? And it wasn't like someone was like scrolling through Instagram one day and found us and called us. Like that has happened now, 4 years later. That's starting to happen where clients are scrolling and find us in a way. But most of the revenue that I can attribute to Instagram is not because someone scrolled on and like stumbled upon us, but it's the strong referrals. It's the, cross promotion with other people that we're working with, those kinds of things. The YouTube, I got to get on YouTube. I have a team now. We are working, once we get this TikTok thing going, which is super easy. And we have a ZK Zen channel on YouTube. It's like going to be like satisfying videos. We're building that up, and then as soon as I can sort of devote a little more time to it, I want to have a fairly robust YouTube of documenting our projects a little more thoroughly than I do on Instagram. But we do a good job documenting them on Instagram. It's just it's not as highly produced and shorter clips of stuff. So, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I had a good weekend of getting things done. The guys worked Saturday. Arturo, Patrick, and Steven worked Saturday in Newton on our exterior stain job. We're trying to get that job wrapped up. The client moved into their home a few months ago. And it's a new construction that's kind of been underway for almost 2 years now, I think, something like that, 1.5 2 years. So they're definitely like anxious to get into their house. So they brought us on board to sort of like square up some of the painting stuff that wasn't quite where they wanted it to be. So we're working as hard as we can to sort of get them in their home quickly. I'm saying a lot because I kind of rushed here and I don't have a clear vision. Sometimes the interviews are so much easier because I can just ask people questions and they do all the talking. And I may go back to that 2 times a week instead of me on these Sundays. I'll have to put a poll up and see what you guys think. But again, please put your questions down there. It's very helpful for me to have questions to answer. But again, Saturday, I got to check on the guys, the Shoreline guys, and I'll post about that. They had 20 guys working. I went to Newton, checked on those 3 guys. We are working with Arbor Coat oil-based semi-transparent stain. I'm not a fan at all. I just don't understand why an oil-based semi-transparent stain is going to lap. The oil-based semi-transparent stains that we use do not lap, as in like you have to viciously keep a wet edge, and if it tacks a slight amount and then you go over it, you get these shiny spots. We're not used to that. I would argue that it's an inferior product because of those issues. It's not penetrating in. So this is a year-old stain that's faded it's faded decently to the point where the client's like, it doesn't look very good. They wanted to do it again a year later. So now we have oil-based semi-transparent Arbor Coat on the house. My initial recommendation was to strip that chemically and with a light sand and then go to Armstrong Clark. But understandably, the client has gone through a 1.5 year long custom build on a gorgeous home, and they don't want to go through the stripping and recoating process of their house before essentially they've even completely moved in. So we're postponing the full strip of the house and the switch to Armstrong Clark for a couple of years. And so the idea was hopefully we could just put the Arbor Coat on the faded spots. But the way that it goes on, when you put a second coat of it on a year later, it turns into like a semi-solid. It sits on top of itself. And when it sits on top of itself, it starts to, it looks, it's like water-based. It looks like water-based stain, the way it sits on the surface and it's film building. More like a semi-solid. It looks good. It doesn't look anything like, a true penetrating oil stain looks, in my opinion. It looks nice, but the depth is gone. The wood is not glowing. It's like the stain is what's glowing from the top, which it's a nice color stain, so it looks nice, but it's not that wood just like glowing the way penetrating oil will. So I'm definitely been disappointed. The first day my guys are not used to this type of stain. All the stains we use are very forgiving with lap marks. So we had a number of shiny spots, lap mark areas that we're going to have to go back and fix. But going forward, we ended up like having to be very, very, very vigilant with wet edge. And we were masking off sections, doing full boards, full length, masking off that next board so that nothing got onto it. And then once we finished that section, then peeling the masking, having another piece of masking on the next section, doing the next section, and going like that very, very methodically. Incredibly vigilant to not get the lap marks. And even then, it's sitting on the surface. It's just not ideal. It looks so much better than it did faded out, but I'll tell you, I've been very disappointed in that product. To me, it's not much different than their water base, and I believe it's what they call a modified oil, which most oil transparent stains aren't, semi-transparent stains are now, at least the ones from Sherwin-Williams and Midland Moore. They're modified oils. They're in order to meet the VOC regulations, rather than changing out to a non-drying oil, which is what we like in the Armstrong Clark and the TWP, which allows it to pass the VOC laws but still be a very high quality penetrating oil, because most of the oil stays in the wood and doesn't off gas, so there's not VOCs coming off of it, so it's compliant, but it's still really high quality and is not going to lap. When you get these drying oils, I don't know, it was a bummer. The house looks good, there's no question, it looks much better, but it's a bummer. Like the third coat it'll turn into a solid color stain just about. So it's like, what do you do in a situation when you put a semi-transparent stain on and it's not really meant to recoat over itself? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because semi-transparent stain is going to deteriorate and need to be recoated fairly regularly. And I'm just really disappointed in the Benjamin Moore Arbor Coat. I know some people have used it and like it. Those people I would encourage to use Armstrong Clark and TWP and tell me that it's the same, because I will tell you it's nothing. Not even near the same product. We love our non-drying oil stains. So that was an awesome project to see happen. I was flying my drone at the end of the day, and it was in sport mode, and I put it to regular mode, and apparently that takes a minute to switch. So I went to move it, and it moved way too fast, faster than its sensors could stop it, and I crashed it in the neighbor's bushes. Broke my drone, have to get it sent in to get fixed. But we had some good drone footage that day before it got destroyed. And then this morning I was up at 5:30. I left the house at 5:30 to be at the job site at 6 to meet a guy who used to work for me that I was sort of subcontracting just for a day to paint one coat on the walls in our new construction project. We're trying to move that project along. The client is trying to get in. I think their house sold faster than they thought, and they're building this new house, and so I think they're living with their son, and I think his girlfriend or his wife. So they are really anxious to get into their new home. So there's a little bit more time pressure than usual. So on a Sunday, I was able to find a good painter to come in and sand the walls and apply the first coat of paint, so that now they can put the trim up, do all their stuff. We can come back, paint the trim, and then our walls will be real easy to cut in. We'll only have to do one more cut, and we don't have to cut a ton around the windows now because they're going to put the trim up. So it saved us time, and I was happy to be able to get it done. So Sarah, my wife, and I, we went to pick up the trailer, load the trailer with all the supplies from that job at about 4:30 today, and we took it back to the shop, unloaded that, and then you'll see from part one we loaded up our trailer with the doors. It was an epic adventure. I'm glad it's over. I'll be even happier tomorrow when the doors get installed. But it's been good. So that's kind of where we're at. We have a lot of the projects that are continuing this week. We can get into that, but I really want to get into questions, and I'd love to see if more people have questions. I answered some of these earlier live, but I didn't post it, so I'm going to answer them again. Someone asked about Sherwin-Williams Designer Edition. I'm still waiting to get my hands on that product. I've spoken to some people from Sherwin-Williams about the Designer Edition product. Excuse me. They say that it's going to compete with Eurolux from Fine Paints of Europe. It's going to be over $100 a gallon, I believe, 120, something like that. It's supposed to be really high quality paint. But seeing is believing. It's all about when you put that paint on a surface and you've touched, feel it, scrub it, get it dirty, clean it. How does it perform? I'm really hopeful that it's an expensive gallon of paint, which will mean that they put really high quality raw ingredients in it and didn't put a lot of fillers in. And if that's the case, then they may have a great gallon of paint that, will be sold in all those Sherwin-Williams stores versus Fine Paints, which is sold in like a few hundred stores across the country. So it could definitely fill in a gap in the market. But if anyone's used the Designer Edition from Sherwin-Williams, I'd love to hear about it. We haven't. So what's the training regimen for new hires? We talked about this live, but I didn't post it. So our training regimen for apprentices is very much put a skilled painter with a apprentice, someone that doesn't have skills, a lot of them at least, and essentially they just go to work with them, and they learn, and the people we're hiring are very motivated and they want to learn, so they ask a lot of questions. So our apprentices are really asking lots of questions, and they're getting the chance to do hands-on learning. That's pretty much how it goes. The shop has been awesome for that. We try whenever possible to start the apprentices in the shop with Dan because the work is so consistent. It's always the same thing all the time, or pretty much the same thing. It's like a piece comes in, we prep it, we prime it, we paint it, it goes out. So they're able to, let's be honest, most of what any apprentice is doing is sanding, like we all did when we first started. Lots of prep. So yeah, our apprenticeship process and learning of it is fairly informal. It's very learn as you go. Depending on the project that we're on, we try to slow down a little bit and take the time to answer the questions about sort of why are we doing this? Why are we using this grade of sandpaper? Why are we using this type of sander, this type of sprayer, on and on. And then really it's up to, we've hired great people who are very motivated, and it's up to them to keep pushing themselves and asking and learning more. We give them all the opportunities in the world to ply their trade, if you will. They get the spray primer fairly regularly. They get to sort of not just sand all day every day. They sand most days, all day most days, as most of them will tell you. But if we just had them sanding and we didn't give them any time on the gun, we want to show them the whole process, and so we try to do that. Let's see, what other questions do we have? How did you decide to increase your crew? That's a great question. So I wanted to increase the crew to a size where we were able to be more flexible on jobs. When we were 3 and 4 people, and I was in the field all the time, we were not very flexible. If a job needed to get done any faster than 3 or 4 people could do it, we just didn't have the ability to add more people. And so now that we're at 9, we have the ability to flex people around. We have, ideally a 2-man crew is working on projects. A 2-man crew is generally the most efficient way to tackle a project, in my experience. We have an apprentice and a skilled painter, a lead painter. But now that I decided to add more people for a couple reasons. My overhead is pretty high. My shop and my booth, they're not cheap. So I needed to generate enough revenue to kind of make up for the overhead and then be profitable. So with a 3-man team, like we just can't generate enough revenue to make the shop worth it, right? That would essentially be one person in the shop, 2 people in the field, or 2 people in the field, 2 people in the shop, 1 person in the field. That's not enough to cover the overhead of a decent sized shop with the spray booth and, you know, all the things that go with it. So I had to look at revenue and figure out, you know, at what point there becomes a sweet spot with overhead, right? Where, you know, I was able to go from 7 painters to 9 painters without a ton more overhead. You know, I had to buy some more equipment, but not a ton more. And I'm able to get a lot more work done. So I'm capped out at 8 or 9 painters right now, and that's probably going to stay for a while, because the next step, I can't run more than 9 painters. And I'm doing a lot to run 9 painters. If I want to have a 10, 11, 12 painters, I'm going to have to hire a project manager. That's overhead. That is money. That is money I pay out each month that does not actually generate revenue, right? The project manager is not actually painting anything. He's managing projects, or he or she is managing projects. So I think I looked at the size of our company and I try to max our size and our revenue with personnel. Like, we need to have enough skilled people and enough apprentices. I can't have all apprentices and 2 skilled painters. So I need to balance like that. I needed to be able to have enough. I wanted to have enough painters where we can move people around. I think now we're able to. I have that flexibility where I can break one person off to go do a job that requires one person. If I need to bring 2 teams of 2 together, I can. And bring another apprentice in, I can have 5 people on a job for a while to kind of keep the timelines moving. Because in the custom world, like, our day and our project scope and the timelines, they're changing all the time. This is not like manufacturing, like just steady Eddie, you know what's happening 3 weeks in the future. Quite often I get a curveball and we have to like readjust all the time. So I think definitely getting to a size where I could maneuver and move people around was very beneficial for us. And then I had to look at the overhead piece too and try to maximize revenue versus overhead. And again, I'm capped now. And if I want to go any farther with painters, I'm going to have to bring in a project manager. If that project manager, if they're managing 10 painters, I'm going to not be profitable again, right? Because I brought on this massive amount of overhead, paying a person full-time to not produce paint. So if I'm going to have a project manager, I'm going to need to have even more painters. And I'm going to have more equipment and more work, and I'm going to sell more jobs. And so it's just like this constant balance. And I mean, we're staying at 9 and under. I mean, for the foreseeable future, let's put it that way. It may be for quite a while. I'm not sure I necessarily want to grow much bigger than this right now. We are lucky we have Chris from Shoreline, and we've been teaming up on a couple projects, and we have a couple more that we're going to be teaming up on. So I have the ability to bring in more labor if I need to, and don't have to carry all that. So that's kind of where I'm at with team size. Right now, the size that we're at is pretty useful. Happy Father's Day, BHI. What is the best gun for spraying the joinery? Oh, this is a fun and very loaded question. We talk about this all the time on here. The best. What does the best mean? John Shear is very famous for saying, "What is good? What does good look like?" I think we have to come to an understanding of what does good look like. What is the best? What are the parameters for the best? And that comes down to the specific client expectations. Are we looking at the more production? What's the fastest spray gun to get that job done? Is best fast and efficient? Is best a super high quality finish? And time is not as important. So when you ask what is the best X, you really need to qualify how are we judging best? It's not fair to say, to spray the type of paint dramatically changes, the type of coating dramatically changes what the best sprayer is. If say even the best is we're going for the finest finish, the nicest looking finish at the end. If that's what we're calling best, there are a number of sprayers that could hold that spot depending on what product you're talking about using. So if I'm talking about using Fine Paints of Europe oil enamel for a single door, now I'm going to be looking at probably a SATA X5000 RP, I believe, or the DeVilbiss Techno Pro Light. Like, we're going to be looking at a cup gun, an automotive cup gun, because if I'm spraying a door, I really don't want to have to set up the Kremlin. The Kremlin, the air assisted airless, is great for larger projects. So again, like, what's the size of the job? So whoever asked that, I think it was Paint Lab from Australia. The answer to that question is it depends. We like lots of guns. I like the airless for the water-based stuff. Air assisted airless is great for high production and high quality solvent-based stuff. And then the cup guns, the automotive cup guns, are great for smaller projects that need high quality finish for solvent. What in your opinion is the best way to estimate jobs so as not to lose money? I mean, the simple answer to that question is just estimate them on the wicked high side. Take your number, triple it. You're not gonna lose money, but you might not book many jobs. So again, the answer to that question is sort of like, in a perfect world, like most people will tell you, like, know your numbers, like know how long it's going to take you. And then if you know how long it's going to take you, then you need to know like what your costs are. What is your overhead? What's your cost per labor hour? And then what's your overhead? And then what's your markup? And then what's your profit you're looking for? And then that will tell you how much should you be looking to charge per labor hour. And so I didn't come up with this stuff. Smarter people than me have shown me how that stuff works. But essentially, we see a lot of guys when they first start out, they might have been getting paid $25 an hour, say, at their last job. And they go on their own. They're like, well, I'm charging $35 an hour, man. I'm making way more money than I've ever made. The truth of the matter is you're probably not. You're probably making less money per hour than you made at your old job with way more stress. Because you have to look at all the hours that you're not actually working and factor that in. You have to look at your overhead. So figuring out how much it actually costs you per hour, John from Paint School will tell you all about this, figuring out how much your labor hour costs, and then figuring out your overhead and figuring out your profit will then tell you how much you need to charge. So I think the best way to charge enough to not lose money, it's kind of technically round 2, maybe you could call it round 3, but that was really short, and even the first one was 15 minutes. This is round 1 of actually sitting down and talking. Yes, John is right. So the amount you need to charge is much more than you actually think. That's kind of the point. Again, especially if you're new and you're coming from working for someone else, and you hear, I was getting paid $25 an hour, and you hear, oh, I'm making $40 an hour now. You're not making $40 an hour the way you were making $25 an hour before. It's not even close. There are so many more costs associated and so much more time spent that's not being billed for. So, yeah, I think you need the first step to answer that question, which was, what is, in your opinion, the best way to estimate jobs so as not to lose money? The first thing is you have to know your costs. It took me a long time to figure that out, for sure. There's years where I was getting jobs for a price that I thought was awesome. And then I never had any money. So a lot of paint contractors that start businesses don't come at this with a spreadsheet in hand and a business degree. I would say that's very safe to say. Most of the people who paint for a living are painting for a living. They're not running businesses. Let's be honest. I think, I don't know, I would say 10%, maybe. That's probably really nice. I don't know, but I would say 10% of all paint contractors in this country are running businesses. It's probably less than that. Most of us are working for a living. I think one of the big differences is a business can be sold at the end. A business doesn't need its owner to necessarily run. It's a machine that the owner can step away from and it keeps running. I don't own a business. Like, I couldn't sell my company tomorrow for freaking anything. I mean, I could sell for what the cost of the tools, and that's probably about it. Like, I don't have a business that someone else can just walk in and take over. So I think the number one thing is know your numbers and start to track them. And then it's like we talk about all the time, have enough demand for your services that you don't have to grind down your numbers, that you can say no. If someone asks you to give you a price, you can comfortably walk away if you need to. That's the best defense you have against getting prices that you don't make money on, is having the choice to say no and having enough work coming in that you don't need the work. Most of us have been in a spot where we need that job when we go to estimate it. And we all know that's a terrible place to be. You're going to get grinded down. There's no better place to be than not needing the work, being a good fit for the work, but not needing it. That's another good point John said. And you can defend your price when you know your numbers. Exactly. We don't move on our numbers. We move on our numbers if you move too. If we change scope, if you give us a larger timeline to get it done. Like, there are some things we can do to change the number, but we don't just change the number and nothing else changes. We change something else on the client's end, because our prices come from someplace. And when your prices come from someplace, it's a lot easier to defend them. So know your numbers. I would say that's huge. Everyone says it. It's so easy to say. I used to hear it all the time, and I would just blow it off because I didn't know my numbers at all, and I was super embarrassed. I work really hard not to be so embarrassed about that stuff anymore. It's my story. It's where I came from. I started with a little giant ladder and a Ford Taurus, and some dude just paid me $15 an hour cash to paint something when I first started my company. It's whatever your situation is, but just try to get a little better each day. Try to get your numbers on point. If you can start out day one with a spreadsheet and record everything, you're way ahead of the game. Excuse me for a sec. Yeah, that's a good point. If someone's doing the job for a lot less than you, they probably aren't doing the same job. That's what we say all the time, right? If I give you a price for $10,000 and some guy comes in for $4,000, I'll tell you right now, there's no chance it's the same thing. 99% of the time, he's giving you an inferior job. He's working way less hours. 1% of the time, that guy's going to go out of business at the end of that job, right? I was at a spot. I know guys who are really smart and really hardworking, but they don't know how to charge properly, and they give an amazing paint job for way less than it costs. And those guys either have no money or they go out of business, or the business breaks them as a person. The guy that doesn't know his numbers and does really good work, that was my father. My dad had a painting company for a few years, and he didn't pay attention to that stuff. My dog's going nuts. I apologize. She left me out the window. Bear, it's okay. Oh man, sorry guys. But the guy who just wants to do really good work and doesn't want to learn the business should continue to work for the company as a lead. Bear, good girl, sit down. I'm sorry guys. Normally she's not like this. Hey. So don't be that guy who wants to own his own company too many times. Or at least if you are that guy, start learning, Understand that you need to know the business well enough to run a business. Otherwise, you're going to be the guy who works. If you look at your hours, you're making way less per hour, working way harder with way more stress, with no guarantee of tomorrow. But it's all just to say I work for myself. Or God, I have my own company. I was so proud I have my own company. I would say I still work for a living. We're working on building a business, working really hard at it. But, it's not something I could sell tomorrow for any amount of money, and definitely not any like multiple of revenue, which is generally, I think, how you calculate the value of companies. Is a good business in our space. I'm pretty sure he's like 3 to 5x revenue. It could be sold for, because the guy could take it over tomorrow and it's just going to keep crushing, right? It's a machine that has systems built in, and it could be sold for something and someone else could run it. I think most of us don't have that. We work for a living under our own banner, which is great. But I think it's important. It was important for me to realize that was the truth. That was the only way I could get better, or at least like understand. I was talking to someone last week, and they were talking about like, oh man, like I kind of feel a little guilty charging more money. And I was like, wait a second. Are you paying yourself a good salary? Are you paying everyone workman's comp, insurance? You have a lettered up vehicle, top of line stuff. You have a savings account, and your company is netting a 30% profit. And then you're making way more money on top of that. If that's the case and you want to feel guilty, I would say pay your employees more. But like, okay, fine. But of course, like that person was not paying themselves. Actually, they weren't paying themselves anything pretty much. So again, if you don't look at the numbers, you might feel bad. Like I've had jobs where we do really well. I remember the first time I had a job we did really well on, right? And I talked to my coach and my mentors, and I was like, I think I should like give some money back. I think I should give them a discount because I did so well in this job. I feel bad. And it was quickly pointed out to me, like, when you do poorly on a job, does anybody pay you more? No, right? So if every time you did better than expected on a job, you gave the money back, and every time you did worse on a job, you ate it, you'd be out of business, right? It's no way to sustain a business, at least, and no way to make any money. So I think once I've learned or came to understand that I was only working for a living and that I needed to run a business by the numbers, at least it gives me a goal to try to achieve, and I'm working to build that. If you don't know it exists, you don't know it's a flaw or a weakness in your game, or it's possible, or what good looks like. Again, like John shared, if you don't know what good looks like, it's a lot harder to get there. So I'm really grateful that I there's the PCA. You can go to the PCA, you can go to an expo, you can sit down at all of these classes, and you can hear a bunch of smart people who know what they're talking about the business side of painting. Yeah, John's right. I think a lot of us probably undercharge. There's no question. Because of that fact that I just stated. When we do well, we always are going to take it on the chin if we don't do well. No client is like, oh, you underestimated this job? Let me cut you an extra $10,000 check to make up for that. It just doesn't happen, right? But so often we think, oh, I did really good on that job. Like, oh, maybe I should like cut him a deal or paint a bunch of extra things. So I don't know. That's the guys who are running real businesses understand that stuff. Pro Paint says, because my price is always higher, I found best that if I explain the process and show that I have the answers for their questions and they feel safe, it works great for me. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot to be said for that, for the right clients. I think that there are certain clients who want to understand the process and want to know that you're an expert. There are some clients that's not as important to, and they may not be ideal clients. All right, we're getting some more people on here. People are starting to get back from Father's Day. Everybody have a good Father's Day. My dog thanked me for being a good father today. She wrote me a letter this morning. It was beautiful. She's a very eloquent dog. Great handwriting for for no thumbs. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. What other questions do we have here? What is the product that you use there? I didn't get it. They were talking about the doors that we did this morning. Or earlier today. So if you guys didn't see that, we did some garage doors, and we used a combination of Ilva Klima primer. PN4B is the primer. It's super high build. You can spray it on at 11 to 12 wet mils, and it will hang. It won't sag at 12 wet mils, which is like unbelievable. 12 wet mils and no sagging is huge. So it dries to probably 6 dry mils, I think. I think it's about 50% solids, something like that. So we're able to, and it dries in 2 hours or an hour and a half. So we were able to put multiple coats of primer on, build it up, knock it down, build it up, knock it down, get rid of that wood grain that we are always shooting to go for with our doors. And we were able to do that much faster than if we were using like the oil primer. So we used Klima PN4B or PN4B to build up the coats, and then we used Fine Paints oil primer because we always put Fine Paints of Europe top coat over Fine Paints of Europe primer. Always. There's really no exceptions. You're crazy if you're going to take Fine Paints of Europe top coat. That would be Eco or Holland Lac. And put it over the top of a non-FPE primer. They recommend against it strongly. I recommend against it strongly. It's just not worth the risk, and they're not going to back up the paint if it fails. So it's a simple step. So we used Ilva primer to build up our coats. Once we got the grain kind of taken down, we filled, knocked down, we build, knock down, build, knock down. Once it's smooth, we applied a thin coat of oil primer, and then we applied 2 coats of Eco Satin. And in that dark color, it takes a long time to dry. In my experience, now I know there's a couple guys that get close, but you're definitely going to sacrifice aesthetic quality with the Eco over the Holland Lac. I'll tell you that personally. We cannot get Eco to look as good as Holland Lac. But on an exterior in a dark color without protection like these doors are, it's going to last longer. Eco will last a little bit longer. It's a little more flexible, and it's a little more color fast. So the Eco is going to last longer. So we did it on these garage doors, sacrificed a little aesthetics, gave them a little bit longer life. That's kind of as we talked to the client, that was a little bit more important for them. So we used Eco Satin on those garage doors. John asked me if I'm working 7 days a week, only this week. I honestly, I work 5 days a week most of the time. But like I was saying earlier, I fill in wherever needed, right? I know you understand the same thing, John. Whenever I'm needed, I'm there. I'm here to keep this machine moving forward and keep everyone working and productive. So I'm sort of the facilitator. So yeah, I needed to work Saturday and Sunday this week. It doesn't really bother me. It's what I signed up for. Like what the heck? When I first started, that was, definitely the case. I was scrapping. I was doing anything I could to stay alive. I just wanted to eat. So I worked crazy hours when I first started, and I'm still I'm open to working those hours. Obviously I don't schedule Saturdays and Sundays. I think this was the first Saturday we've worked in a few months. My guys, and only three of the guys worked. They're going to take off. Most of them are going to take off Wednesday when it rains. But we just wanted to get one more sunny day in before the rain hit. And it was them. My team came to me and was like, we looked at the weather. I think if we want to keep this client happy and on deadline, like, we should work Saturday. And I was like, hey, guys, that's awesome. I try to never use that. Like, I don't tell them we have to work Saturday, because once in a blue moon, we'll actually have to work Saturday. And, I don't want to abuse that. When we need to work a Saturday, we'll work a Saturday. I needed to work a Sunday this weekend. I worked a Sunday. Like, it is what it is. I take off Wednesdays at 3:30 to go play golf for, the afternoon. And, that helps me keep my head straight. And so, I get to play golf from 3:30 to 7:30 on Wednesdays. If I have to work a few Sundays and Saturdays, like, so be it. It's the cost of doing business. Yeah, sometimes you have to. Anybody else have questions? Teamwork. Let's see. Oh, here's a question. Just now. When do you see your company being in the green after paying for your equipment investment? That's a good question. I would have to add it up. So we are pretty much in the green until I just did this new retrofit of the booth that's coming in. So I've extended myself a little bit, but not crazy. About $20,000 now. But that I see that $20,000. So I paid half in cash, and then we're financing the other half, just to like keep the cash flow going. I probably could take it out and put it there, but at this point I want to keep the cash flow where it is. But I have a tendency to sort of extend myself without out kicking, but I was listening to someone talking about out kicking your coverage. I like to really push that limit sometimes, and I'm trying to get a little more conservative. I have more employees now. When it's just me and a couple people, I was able to be a little more lean, or just a little more risky. Now we're trying to be like more solid. We got to buy work vehicles soon, so that's kind of the next thing. But the retrofit to the booth should pay for itself really, really fast. How many years did it take initially? So essentially, I kind of like, I never gotten much debt at all. I had like college loans that I like messed up on. I didn't have good credit, and no one was going to give me much money. I didn't make very much money in the business for a long time. So I didn't really take on much debt. The first time I took on debt was half of the first spray booth, and that's paid off now. So, but I tried to every time I would do a job, I would take the profits and I would buy another piece of equipment. And that's really sort of how we built this thing, is like one piece at a time, make some money, buy another thing. And everyone in my life will tell you that I have many, many times said like, oh, once I buy this next thing, that'll be the last thing I have to do. And then I can just start stacking cash in the bank. I'm letting my dog out. But there's always that next thing. So I've hired a like specific bookkeeping service, bookkeeping for painters actually. I have a great accountant now, and I'm looking at next year making much more of my decisions based off of pure numbers, which is really, really exciting. And I don't want to be in debt, so that's going to be the goal. But again, I think for a long time I was ignorant to my numbers at all. So when you're ignorant to your numbers, you can just kind of do whatever you want. You don't know what's happening. And I just flew by the seat of my pants. And I think I've been lucky. I've been really lucky. I'm also blessed with, a pretty strong work ethic and some intellect. And so I've been able to sort of get by in a way that I would not recommend to people, for sure. I could probably be much further along had I started looking at the numbers much sooner. But this is sort of my story. This is like how I got here. So now it's just like I look to the people who I want to be like and want to emulate, and I go like, well, what did you do? And it comes down to looking at the numbers and studying the numbers and being in the numbers. Like John said, pure numbers is boring, but it's useful. It's extremely useful. And my goal is to have a company where everybody has a 401k and has health insurance, and gets paid really well and makes really good money. And in order to do that, I got to be looking at the numbers, and I need to be making decisions based off the numbers. It's not ideal. It's my truth, man. It's my truth, But it's also bullshit. If you really want to be successful at a business, go to business school, and you'll find out flying by the seat of your pants and not looking at numbers is not the way to have a successful business. And again, we just talked about most people that we know aren't running businesses. Most of you guys listening probably not running businesses. We work for a living. I work for a living. And if I want to run a business, I have to look honestly at myself, and it comes down to looking at the numbers. And so I'm working very hard to get uncomfortable and push myself on those, because I love to nerd out about paint. How do I get this finish to lay out even better? What's the best primer for this situation? Ooh, man, that stuff, super easy. I love it. But guess what? Like, that doesn't pay the bills anymore. Like, I have a team of people that I need to keep going. Like, I need to now become a business person and a painter second, and pay painters to paint. And I need to run a business. And so that's definitely like what I'm looking at now. Is I've been able to essentially completely remove myself from the field. I do very little painting. I fill in wherever I need to. Again, like, I move stuff around. I have no problem doing any single aspect of what we do. But if I'm doing it, it's not a very effective use of my time generally. I want to own a business. There are some guys, if you go to PCA Expo, everyone that's a painter here, I would recommend going to PCA Expo next year and joining the PCA. It's been incredibly beneficial. Get uncomfortable. You're going to go be a small fish in a big pond. There are some killers there. But guess what? Like, that's how you'll get better. And you go the first year and you kind of shut up and you listen and you're like, oh man, like, wait, you don't want to talk about how paint goes on? Like, you don't want to talk about, like, the best caulking to use for kitchen repaints? Like, wait a second. But once you start to understand that these people are running paint businesses, there's a lot to be gained from that. You can still be a painter and a craftsperson. That's awesome. But if you want to have employees and you want to build a business and say you're a business person, you have to study business. And that's what, if there's anything I can, like, I'm going to start to be talking more about, it's that kind of stuff. It's the stuff that I wish I had heard even earlier than I did. I probably first heard it at like a Sherwin-Williams Pro show like 7 years ago when, God, if someone can tell me that guy's name. What is that dude's name? He's written a couple books. It's like a 4-letter last name. And he was talking about how to break down your numbers, and I was just sitting there like, oh, man, like, I'm so screwed. Like, I'm so far from ever actually doing this. And it made me feel less than and crappy, and I didn't do anything about it because I felt like I was too stupid and too far behind the curve. So I'd encourage anyone who's feeling like that to, like, get over it, or at least just go sit near people. Like, you go to Expo and you just sit near people who are talking about business, and it, like, starts to, like, slowly, like, change the way you see stuff. And for me, that's been very, very valuable. I think we are who we surround ourselves with. And if we just sit on Instagram and we talk about painting all the time with everybody and we're business owners, that's probably doing our business and our employees a disservice. It's great to talk about paint. We all love to talk about paint. We're painters. That's why we're here. But I think that talking about the business side of paint, there's a bunch of guys who love it. They eat, sleep, and breathe. That's all they talk about. And you go to PCA and you get to meet those guys and see, like, what they're up to. And, like I was talking about, you want to run a 15, 20-man company, like, you're not painting. And your overhead and your work payroll is such that, like, if you're not on your game numbers-wise, you're screwed. So, I think that stuff is very important. Let's see, people have said some stuff. You are allowed to do mistakes when you work one-man show, but when you have workers, then they think can get really ugly. Yeah, I think that's kind of the point. Is like, it was one thing when I was like paying everybody cash under the table, and I had some like random guys who kind of like helped me out, and I was flying by the seat of my pants. I didn't know what the heck was going on. But now I have like people whose livelihoods depend on me. A lot of them now, and the stakes are high, and the responsibility is great, and I don't get to do the easy thing anymore. I don't get to just do what I like to do. If I wanted to just paint, I should not have employees, have one person with me and just paint. And there's nothing wrong with that. Jessica's the perfect example of that. But again, most people who are doing that aren't charging nearly enough. If I charge $60, we're up to $75 an hour now. That's sort of our bill rate. That's what we're trying to do. if I'm charging $75 an hour and I have a team of 8 or 9 people, that guy who's 2 men and they're super skilled, they should be 100, not 55, right? They're going to be more efficient. The owner's on site every day. They don't need to have nearly as much work to stay busy, right? There are so many things going, and certain clients will pay more and want to have, especially at the high end, want to have the owner of the company doing the painting. Jessica experiences it all the time. So I think it's very interesting that generally the larger companies are the ones who charge more per hour. But if you look at the economics of it, it makes more sense that the smaller companies should be charging more per hour. But they suck at business. Most of us, when we're small and we don't want to grow, man. Like I said that forever. There's a podcast with me and Nick May where I don't know. I said some stuff I probably don't believe anymore. But I think we change, we learn, we grow, we listen, we try to get better. I don't know. I'm just sort of ranting at this point. But that's sort of like where I'm at now. And again, I'll say it again. Like I met John paint school here at PCA. John runs a established company. We'll have him on here. You are who you hang out with. So if you're trying to up your game, for me, PCA has been huge. It was definitely very, very uncomfortable the first time I went. And in fact, the first time I went, I didn't go back for like 3 or 4 years. And it was a different PCA then, and I think it is getting better. But again, like, get outside your comfort zone, hang out with people who are doing better than you, see if you can, for my guys, that's what we built. John's laughing at me. My goal is to have a small company. I'd like to continue to work and train my apprentice to mirror what I do, then hire another quality guy, and I want to charge a premium rate. I think the formula has been laid out by people before us. Jessica showed me. Just make an insane demand. Blow every client's mind. When it's you and your guy working, blow their mind. Make them like the Airbnb. We talked about this before. Like Airbnb, like when they started, they were trying to just make raving fans. People who were like lunatic fans. You wouldn't believe there's this thing they talk about with them. I'm gonna run out of time, but this thing they talk about with them where they were like, okay, at a 5-star rating, a 5-star experience is like perfect. What does a 6-star rating look like? What is a 7? What is an 8? What is a 9? What does a 10-star experience look like? It was ridiculous. It was like the president's chopper brings you to the place and you walk down and Madonna escorts you to the front door. Like that's a 10-star experience. Like, right, nothing like, it's not real. But the exercise of like, how do you give a better and better experience is a very valuable exercise. And if you do that, I think you'll find you'll be able to give better quality experiences. You'll have raving fans and you can charge more money. John and I had a great time at PCA. I hope everyone comes to PCA. There's 1 minute and 40 seconds left. So if anybody has one more question to ask, I'm going to shut this off. We have a big day tomorrow. I think they probably talked about that stuff. Airbnb, like you look at the startups and they figured it out, right? They figured out how to. They always talk about they do a lot of stuff that doesn't scale at first, but it builds this like momentum that they can then scale off of. So we don't have to necessarily scale, but let's do the things that are going to build that momentum and create those raving fans. What's that 10-star experience like? I think, oh man, they talk about it. It's like, I want to say it's even like you get like a rocket ship that like takes you, I forget what it is, but if you guys should all try to find the story of Airbnb and how it started. But they did this like thought experiment of, okay, what's a 5-star experience look for us? And then what is 6 and what is 7 and what is 8? And it gets more ridiculous. But it's a great way to think outside the box and try to up your game. I spend a lot of time trying to think outside the box and up my game for my clients. And I think, we can all benefit from that. So we got about 20 seconds left. Again, everybody, it's Sunday night. It's Father's Day. I really appreciate you sitting here and listening to me. Again, your questions are incredibly valuable. Thank you very much. Follow us on YouTube. The podcast will be on Spotify in the next couple days. Everybody have a great night.